Welcome to the 30-minute hour. It's the personal development podcast for the seven-figure entrepreneur who's looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Also joining me, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday.
Yes,
Happy Monday. It is August the 12th. Can you believe it?
man, time is flying. Let me tell you, this year is almost over.
Man.
We'll be singing Christmas carols before you know it. But it certainly is a happy Monday, and happiness is an emotion. So we're here today. This really ties in, Ted, because we're going to talk about three secrets to building emotional resilience.
Mm.
That's our theme for today. And I'm excited just because, I do a lot of reading and research on different topics, especially that's the thing that everybody's talking about, emotional intelligence and everything else. But I can say I've never heard it presented the way that our guest is going to present it today. I've
Mm.
never heard that perspective. And I read all the time. I'm a personal development junkie. And I have never heard it presented this way. So everyone, those of you watching, those of you listening, you are really in for a treat. We're going to talk about these three secrets to building emotional resilience. And why not just get right to it? Let's just do it, Ted. Let's get right to it.
Jump right into it. Just jump into it.
Let's just jump right into it. Don't keep the people waiting. All right. So, our guest is a sensory perception and emotion management strategist. She was sparked by a significant emotional event that propelled her to question the very essence of human feelings. She blends her expertise in consulting with a profound passion for emotional resilience. Please join me in welcoming to the 30-minute hour, Kim Korte.
Welcome. I love this intro. I love all the energy. Just getting started. This is amazing.
Oh, let's go.
We're just getting started. So,
Let's
so
do it.
let's before we really get into this, I definitely want to give you a shout out. Again, like I mentioned, you have this unique approach to redefining emotional and awareness and emotional intelligence. Like I said, I've never heard it presented this way before. So I'm curious. Let's just kind of set everybody straight from the beginning. Like, why is this something that's so critical that our entrepreneur followers need to pay attention to?
Because as much as we would like to think that we are 100% logical and we make all of these decisions that are emotionless, and I have heard many a person tell me, I have no emotions in my decisions. They are underlying every decision. And so the more connected you are to your emotions, the better decision making you're going to have, and you're going to be better able to face the some of the difficult things that come up, which do, because I'm an entrepreneur, it happens. And so your ability to connect to them is going to help you to make better decisions and have better communication, all kinds of things that are related to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, all these studies say that we tend to make emotion-based decisions that we justify with logic. And I saw a study where someone they had a brain injury in the section of their brain. You're probably familiar with this. The section of their brain that involves emotions was damaged, and they literally couldn't make any basic decisions.
Yes, Antonio Damasio.
Yes.
He's a neuroscientist who is very heavy into decision making. That's who you go to, and in fact, in that was in his book, Descartes' Error, because Descartes says, "I think, therefore I am," and Antonio Damasio says, "No, I think it should be, I feel, therefore I am." And the reason is that emotions filter, prioritize. We use them to lean into what we want, what we don't want, to, you know, do everything. It's just the driving factor of our lives, and
Mm.
with good reason too.
Yeah, and I think it's really about a feeling. Like, and I think if you're aware of how you make people feel, and if you can alter someone's state, I mean, I think that really helps. If you're an entrepreneur and you can alter someone's state and get them feeling a certain way, that's only going to help.
True, but I'm gonna tell you that people make themselves feel how they feel,
Hmm.
and you
Mm,
can do your best effort to, what I would say, give them the ingredients to feel a certain way, but you really can't change them. Everybody feels their feelings their way based on their life and their experience. So you just can provide the ingredients for it, but how they feel, you can't really force.
Hmm.
mm.
Right, because it's all about how they respond to the stimulus, and yeah, no, that's good. So I'm curious. Let's because there's a lot of roads I can go down
I
with
know
this
we only
topic.
got 30 minutes in
Right,
this
right.
hour.
Well, yeah, this is gonna be close to an hour, but I am curious. Let's kind of have some background perspective. Uh, Tell us about a time early in your journey where you hit like an emotional rock bottom yourself.
That's really easy because it's the turning point for me.
Hmm.
I had been through a lot in my life up till this point, so it wasn't like this was um, the only thing that had ever happened to me. This was just like that tipping point where I said, "I can't take this anymore." I had 2 businesses with my ex-husband, and I had put him through chiropractic college, so one of those was a chiropractic business, and the other one was a complementary business. We had a running shoe store, and, he and I had a divorce because he left me for the woman who worked for us. My whole life had been, around us building this practice, this business, and then eventually retiring. We had nothing but interaction with patients and our regular customers at our store, our staff, and the woman that he left me for. She was a friend of mine. We had her over for dinner every Monday night, and here I was left with nothing. I was going back to an old career that I had prior to our move to San Diego. And I was packing up to move to San Francisco, where I had been from the Bay Area. And I just laid there. I fell to the floor in just sheer like overwhelm. And I was there from like I know it was light out when I went down and it was dark when I got up. And I was just thinking through all of these, what had happened? How did I get here? What did I do? Why did he do this? Just, that barrage of thinking and thoughts. And I got up from the floor and said, I've got to figure out how to keep this from happening to me again. The fact is you can't. You can't stop. Oh, excuse me. You can't stop people from doing what they do. You can only do the best for yourself to make better decisions in the future. So I went, okay, I got to be a better decision maker. And I did some self examination and I said, oh, I didn't spend my time right and all this other stuff. But fast forward, I read a book that really changed my life. I'd been interested in emotions this whole time because I knew it was a factor, but I thought thoughts were more important. And it wasn't until, managing thoughts, I should say, but it wasn't until I read this book that I realized I really needed to focus more on emotions.
Hmm, interesting. So that was the book by, was it Lisa Feldman
Barrett,
Barrett? Yeah.
yes, yes.
Okay.
It's called How Emotions Are Made: The Secret Life of the Brain.
Hmm.
And I kind of thought like I had no control over my emotions and that I just needed to change how was thinking. But my thoughts weren't changing readily enough. Like some of these thoughts I had just kept coming back and I would, repeat them and do all that kind of stuff, but it just wasn't helping as much as I would have liked. And granted I am a stubborn person, but it just didn't feel like it was my entire answer. And she helped me to understand through her book that we have emotions based on little, I call them recipes in our head. Everything that we have or we experience in the world is in response to exterior sensory data coming in, and it comes into the brain, and your brain has to decide what to do with it. And so what does it use? It uses past experience. So this is the reason why we experience what we expect, because our brain is just reproducing the recipes that we've got in our head. It's like we've cooked spaghetti the same way all the time, and so every time we get it, it tastes the same. And that really, really, really made a difference for me. And then I also learned about this sensory system that's super important to emotions. It's called interoception. It's how we feel inside of our bodies. And then that really sparked up, even more. Like I had to learn more about interoception. I had to learn more about how that works, like follow the process, because I'm very process oriented. I like process and procedures, and especially repeatable ones. And the brain has one, and it has it for everything that it does. So what we see, what we hear, what we smell, our whole world is a prediction by the brain that it uses based on all of our prior experiences. So what we see is a prediction of the brain. What you see me right now is your brain's prediction. And we can get those predictions wrong. And because of that, we can get our emotions wrong. And to me, that was really important, because it got me to be more um, flexible with my emotions, to know like, oh, just like I could see somebody and think, oh, there's my friend Joe, and look again and wait, it's not Joe. And that allows me to have compassion for myself and others in their responses, because they're only responding with what they know.
So here's a question that just came to me, and it came to me as you were talking about your experience with your husband at the time, and it has to do with managing emotions. So there's somebody that's watching or listening to us. They have a business partner, or maybe it's a customer that really did something that angered them, that violated their trust. What advice do you have for them so that they don't just hang on? Because it'd be easy just to hang on to the negative emotion of anger, bitterness, resentment, that type of thing. What advice do you have for that person, that, especially if you have to be around the person all the time? What advice do you have to really release any type of resentment or bitterness or negative emotions towards that
I,
individual?
that has to be the communication factor, right? Your communication needs to be stellar, and that takes listening, because I'm going to go back to the whole prediction of the brain. We don't always get all of the conversation for a couple of reasons. One could be we have our own conversation going on our head while someone's talking. We're also listening to ourselves, and we can't do two things at once. We like to think we can, but our brain can't. It's very singularly focused. So while we're listening to ourselves go, that guy's a jerk, he's trying to rip me off, blah, blah, blah. He's not paying attention to what I've just said, and you're not paying attention to what they just said. So
Right.
seeking clarification and detail. So if you ask them, well, please give me some more details around it, because then you start to see that they might not have seen it correctly, or they might not have heard you correctly, because they are only working with, what they heard or what they think they heard. And that is, the frailty of hearing. I think seeing is pretty impactful, but hearing is more impactful, like I said, because of your inner voice combating with the exterior voice, combating with your emotions that are filtering what you think they're saying. That can make trying to have a very honest, open, clear-cut communication difficult when it's highly emotional. So it's always showing interest, trying to get some detail, and then feeding back to them what was really, you were trying to convey, or what was the situation at the time as you saw it, or as you wanted it to be. Um, that that I think is a good place to start.
Interesting. So it should be more about listening and really making sure you're getting clear, because sometimes, and I run into that a lot of times too. Like if someone sends an email, and if I
Mm,
just look at the words, I'm like, what? And
right.
it's easy just to fire something back, as opposed to
It
do what you
is,
said and listen.
right?
And they, when I
Because
talk
your
to them, it's
brain will
something
skip
totally different.
words too,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then all your assumptions and biases and all that come into play as
Yep.
well, right? You
Yes.
know, s- I've had people say things like, "Oh, yeah, well, I didn't do such and such because, I assumed that you." Well, you assumed. Why would you assume that? Well, I was just thinking, but I didn't say that though.
Yeah. And that's the predictive nature of the brain. Did you ever watch the what was that show, Felix Unger, The Odd Couple, when it was on
Mm-hmm.
TV?
Yes.
I'll never forget this. When I was a kid, there was a scene where Felix was in court for a car accident. And the person said, "Well, I assume." And then he's like, "Aha, assume." And then he wrote out the word assume and he circled, "When you assume, you make an ASS, out of you and me." And
Right.
I thought that was just so funny.
Yeah.
But it's even more funny now because of what I know.
Yeah.
No, this is great. This is great. And I've heard you mention before that sometimes you go through a life earthquake, right? Just
Yes.
things happen and you go through a life. So what advice do you have for the person who right now they're in the midst of a life earthquake? I mean, as far as from an emotional management standpoint, what advice do you have for that person?
Well, having been through quite a few, literally, meaning I live in California, and not too many years back, in fact, it was the year we bought the house I live in now, 2014, and we had a huge earthquake, and there's a lot of aftershocks, and it gets difficult, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm always expecting an earthquake. I'm always expecting an earthquake. But if you accept the earthquake, and I'm going to do this in the sense of life quakes, if you see it for what it is, right? Because we sometimes have a tendency to say, "Oh, no, that's not what it is," or "It's something else," or "It's someone else." But if you can look at it and acknowledge the earthquake for what it is, and absorb the shocks from it, we often want to ignore it, or not pay attention, or not let the full impact of it go through us. The
Mm,
more we try and ignore it, the stronger it gets,
Mm,
because feelings come in a couple of flavors, I like to say. We have the feelings that we're used to, like anger and sadness and love and kindness and joy. And then we have the feelings that we don't typically associate with, in that would be of the same character, or meaning the same system that produces it, that
mm,
interoceptive system I talked about. That's hunger, and your heart beating. Let's say you just were anxious and your heart is racing and you notice it, or you're tired, or you need to use a restroom, or you need to go to sleep. All of these things are using the same system. And so we we will be more and more exhausted, more and more hungry, the more we ignore it. And the
mm.
same thing happens with these emotions. They become stronger and they become in our face, and they start to interrupt our lives unless we just feel them. And they pass just like an earthquake. They will pass, even though at the time it feels like forever. And even though that earthquake, that big earthquake I went through, it was this one of the scariest moments of my life. I passed through it. And all of my life quakes, I passed through them. But I'll
mm,
tell you what, I have done things to make my life more quake proof. And
Mm.
that's part of it, is doing that introspection, that look around your life and say, where are my frailties in here? How am I leaving myself exposed? And how can I shore up myself to have better boundaries, better protections that don't shut the world out?
Mm. Now that point right there is really big, right? How do you put in those boundaries without shutting the door on everyone, right? Like, I
Exactly.
mean, can you talk about that a little bit? Like how do you do that? Because some people say they've experienced hurt or they experience disappointment, and so they won't, let themselves, be open, right, to the emotions or excitement or whatever it is, because they were impacted a certain way.
Yes. Yeah, not everybody is as stubborn as me and, refuses to let, a situation rule their life. Because it
Sure.
was I realized very quickly that I could have this turn me bitter, that divorce make me bitter. I had a friend who told me that his mother, after his dad left her for another woman, she had no life at all. She
Mm,
never ever went on to find love again or to even really have a life. She was just bitter, and I didn't wanna be that person. But at the same time, you're feeling a little bit vulnerable, right? Because it's that scar, and I felt like I had open heart surgery, but you have to allow the healing to happen. And there was a few things that I found, I guess you could say, empowering from it all. And one of them was probably the hardest thing that I did. And that was to look at my responsibility in that situation.
mm,
Where was I at fault? No, I did not cheat. That was not me. I was not the one who did that. And I didn't do a couple of things that transpired, but I did make the decision to marry this person. And I did allow certain things that didn't feel really good, um, and subjugated my feelings just to let him have his way. I did, I didn't look with enough scrutiny at as to what kind of partner I wanted to have in life. So I took that time, and as hard as it was, it's now much easier for me to do now that I've done it once. But I find that in difficult situations when I look back and say, "What was my part in this?" That gives me the ability to find what specific boundaries. So now what I'm looking at not is, I don't wanna be with a man again. I don't want to allow a man again in my life who displays this or who needs this or is this way, personality traits that I knew did not work well with my personality. So it's taking that ability to learn from that mistake, but that takes introspection, and it also takes responsibility, because there was plenty that I did, and it allowed me to grow. The the point of all that is allowing for specificity. And when I talk about emotions and trying to improve your emotional intelligence, if you want to call it, I would say it's your acumen, or even your emotional palate, is to be able to distinguish the differences in situations, in people, so that it's not all men, it's not all races, it's not all anything. It's
mm,
very specific personality traits or very specific ingredients of that situation that make it different from other ones, from other people, from other groups, from other encounters. And I like to say, because I liken emotions to uh, the ingredients that we get from this outside world and our inside world. We create our responses using these recipes, which are a combination of all of our experiences, uh, everything from the time we're born. Even actually, we start learning voices. That is a sensory perception when we're like 7 months in the womb. So we start building our world, the world that we experience, because it's all literally in our head. And then that is what we use to create our emotional responses. So if we can distinguish the differences in them to improve our ability to taste those differences, just like a chef would taste in the food that they consume, then we can have better distinction in our emotions in situations, and we can identify our emotions more readily. I like to use this example of vanilla ice cream. So vanilla ice cream is of limited ingredients, right? You've got milk and cream and eggs and egg yolk, to be specific, sugar, salt, and yet they can each taste a little different because flavor is a combination of senses, just like emotions are a combination of senses. Flavor is a combination of sensory input. And so when you taste the ice cream, you're going to be looking at the color and you're going to notice the texture in your mouth. And you might be able to distinguish between those 3 vanilla ice creams, that one is made with really rich cream, a real high quality cream and ingredients. The other one might be a little bit more icy, or perhaps it's got a lot of sugar in it than the other one did. And then the last one might have a different kind of vanilla altogether. And so when we can take our emotions and be able to be that distinct in identifying them, that allows us that ability to have that emotional intelligence that we're looking for in making decisions, in finding a partner, in communicating to anybody. It whether it be a client or a business partner or your child or whomever, because the more you know what you want and need and what you want to lean into and lean away from, the better you are able to distinguish it and to communicate it to others and to yourself. That might have been very long-winded. I apologize.
That was deep. That was
Yeah,
deep, but I get it.
really.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm just curious because your book is titled Yucky, Yummy, Savory, Sweet, Understanding the Flavors of Emotions. So,
Yes.
like,
Mm.
how exactly do you, because this, I mean, again, I've never heard it expressed this way. How did you make the connection between these flavors and emotions? Because that's just not a thing most people think about. How did you make that connection?
Well, so I live in wine country, and my husband is a sommelier, which is someone who is a wine expert, and we'll talk about wine in very granular terms. So he taught me. Actually, my palate for wine has changed tremendously, and so I said, "Ooh, I'm going to write this book and call it The Emotional Sommelier," because what I was trying to do is to get people to notice, just like I said, that our emotions are ingredients and we use our brain to create them. But then I realized, like, the people I want to help, they might have problems with drinking. So let's not do that. A really natural fit was, to be an emotion chef instead of emotional sommelier, because we all have experience with eating, right? We
Mm.
all know what a recipe is and what ingredients are. Well, we might not really care about wine or anything else, but everybody eats food and everybody is familiar with what it feels like in their body when they like a food, or what it feels like in their body when they don't like a food. And
Mm.
it's connecting to feelings in our body, which is the number one thing you need for emotional intelligence. This interoceptive awareness has been studied now, it's a newer term, but this connecting to how you feel inside of your body is highly, highly associated with emotion regulation. My niece is autistic and on the spectrum, you could say. And there's a woman who has a book called The Interoceptive. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the name of her book now. The Interoceptive Curriculum in my bookcase. And it's to help therapists, occupational therapists, help these neurodivergent children and adults connect to their feelings so that they can distinguish between feeling sad or being tired, feeling hungry or being angry, because they get mixed up. And so what I'm trying to do is help people to notice those differences, but on a much more higher level, because many of us have a higher capacity than someone who's neurodivergent. So when we are able to connect to this system, just like we can connect to taste, then we're even better off emotionally, because we can better identify them. And taste, like I said before, is a product of multiple sensory systems, just like emotions are. And when we make that connection to what we're tasting emotionally, then that gives us our greatest capabilities, I think. And to be honest, we don't take enough of an examination on, I think, on a regular basis of how we feel, or in a situation when we feel a certain way, that we step back and say, okay, what else is going on here? You, you, I like to refer to it as like having a second taste of food. So if a chef is presented a dish and they take a taste of it, they'll try and gather the ingredients. And then if they take a second taste, they notice more. So, and they might even take a third or a fourth, just to capture all of the flavors in a dish. And the same is true for us. When we're in a situation where we're angry, our brain is going to filter the ingredients of that situation, what is going on around us, from like this to this. And if you're just listening to this, I'm saying a wide view to a very narrow view, because it's focusing on someone that we may not have liked before, someone that we may have assumptions about because of how they look, or a situation that we're in. So we're going to make really big assumptions because of our feelings, and the brain is using our feelings. So if we are consciously aware, so this is when thoughts play a gigantic role. So when we're consciously aware and say, wait, what is going on here? Do I really need to feel this way? And are able to take in more of the situation, it could change it, but you have to allow it. And if you never ever allow yourself to experience more of anything, you're always going to be experiencing the same thing over and over and over again. And what you expect to feel based on your past will be what you feel
Hmm.
for the rest of your life.
Okay. All right. So as far
Did I
as
go too off filter?
no, no,
Kilter,
no,
rather.
no. Again, I just think that's a unique way, and I think it's memorable too, because everybody can think about their favorite flavor of ice cream, and now I have a connection to emotions and emotional management. So just from the book, can you share with our listeners three three ideas that can help them to become more emotionally resilient out of the book?
Well, I think I've shown right now that feelings aren't facts.
Hmm. Yep.
They are just a prediction of the brain. And when you understand that, then you have the ability to say, oh, this might not be right. They feel so right. And they're also the underlying, like we talked about earlier, the underlying um, driver of our thoughts, decisions, and behaviors. So you might not be behaving in a way that you like. Look at your feelings. Your thoughts are and decisions aren't taking you in the right direction. Look at your feelings, because those feelings that you're using might not be factual. They may have served you at some point in time, but not today. The other thing is that we learn in life. Sometimes it's forced upon us by a bad situation, or we're taught it culturally. It's expected of us, because if you're a man, you're told, oh, men don't feel. When we, either by experience or by teachings, learn to shut our feelings down, we are shutting down the main communication to to ourselves and to our outside world. So real emotional intelligence can't be developed unless we connect to those feelings inside of our body. Because literally, we have a neuron that, think of it like a chef that has these peptides that it produces to send you those feelings in your body. And it's based on those quote unquote recipes in your head. And so these neurons go to the body and produce the emotion. And the result of the emotion is the feelings that you have. And so you can either shut them down or listen. And when you listen, you can say, that's not right, and make a choice to change that recipe or not cook it again, or change it up a bit, or not listen to it like so many of us don't or didn't. And I can say that that was me. I was definitely a shutter downer. I was definitely a willful blindness advocate. So, I mean, that's just how I lived my life in willful blindness, which was why my husband had an affair for a year and I pushed it down. I wouldn't connect to the feelings. I wouldn't look at what was right in front of me because of my feelings. So I would say connecting to your feelings is really, really important. And the next one I would say is so important is combat your fears with curiosity and love.
Hmm.
Curiosity is the most fundamental vehicle for you to create new experiences, for you to widen your scope, for you to change your view. And you might say, oh, I'm afraid to change my view. And that's fear. You should never be afraid of your view. If it's not founded on fact, if it's not founded on something solid, then do you really want to believe in jelly or water? You want to believe in something that really resonates with you. And it's not until you really challenge some of those things that you really begin to learn who you are and to develop into the person that you're supposed to be and who you really are inside. So by being curious and approaching things with love, it gives you that ability to uh, examine yourself and to be, I think, grow as a human being. And just one other quick little point about that underlying. So if you're hungry, your responses are much different, right? Than if you're not hungry. Like if you've got a full stomach and someone does something, you might not get upset. But if you're ravenous, you could. And that's because feelings, the feeling states that we're in at the time of any event can impact how we respond. And so if we're feeling love for people, if we're feeling more compassion, it's going to change how we respond. Obviously, taking care of your body is really important so that your energy levels are there, but also making a choice to want the best for other people. Also, or in a situation, wanting to come to some kind of agreement, and to overcome anything or to ever come to some agreement, there has to be at least some degree of love. I'm not talking about the passionate kind. I'm talking about the kind that just wants better for yourself and for other people.
You know, it's interesting. Something you said. Even if you're feeling tired, let's say, that can really impact how you perceive things and how you. And I've got to a point like sometimes if it's one of those days where I only got 5 hours, 4.5 hours of sleep for some reason, I really have to watch myself because I can be short with people. Like, and I have to really like, okay. So what you said, I think is true. Hunger, being tired, and this is really where that awareness piece comes in.
Right. So part of the looking at the quote unquote ingredients of a situation, the part of your memories are made with many things, all of the external and internal factors. So when we create a memory in our brain that we're going to use in the future, our feelings at the time play a factor in it. And so if we're in a bad mood when we meet somebody and we now have a bad impression of them and we think, well, this is who they are because of, this experience. Well, that underlying that was your feelings that were bad. So when you're in a situation and you're responding, let's just say negatively, then if you can look at even how you're feeling at that moment in addition to what's going on around you, that allows you to go, wait, like, no, I'm not feeling good here, and I think that this is playing a part in my response. They know that you're going to get a different verdict from a judge if it's right before lunch than after lunch. And if you go on a job interview and it's a cloudy day, it could play a factor, especially if that person's really sensitive to the dark. It's crazy all the things that can factor in that we use every day and believe every day to be true. So that's
That,
why.
that judge thing, that's a great example of that, because that's a very well-known thing. That,
Yes.
yeah, it's all about how they feel, and that could impact your fate if you're going before them. So,
Scary, right?
oh yeah, yeah. Now, yeah, you brought out some great insights here. So I am curious. I know you get asked a lot of questions in different arenas that you flow through. Um, what's one question that you never get asked, that people never ask you, that you wish Ted and I would have asked you today?
What's the most important emotion for you to examine and develop?
Hmm, that is a great
And that
question.
would be love. Love is a funny thing. We all need it. We all crave it. It's part of what we need to even live. Human interaction is so important. And yet we never really think about what needs to happen for us to feel love.
Mm.
What are those actions that spark it? Because love, and I say this is true of every emotion that we experience, the emotion itself is not positive or negative. The outcomes are. And
Mm.
so how can you say you truly love if you feel ill towards other people? And when I mean ill, like you want ill for other people. And so when you can examine what needs to happen for you to feel love, or when you're not feeling love, why you don't feel it in that instance, I think that's a great, great exercise. If you did nothing else in the self-examination of your feelings, if you just did that, you might see some significant changes because that is the most important emotion that is critical. And it's not just in the human realm, it's critical in the animal world. If you look at how they survive, it's a form of love and bonding that takes place.
Hmm. That is a great question. What is the most important emotion? Yeah, and love. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks. Thanks.
So we're at this is Ted's favorite part of the show, Kim. I just want to put that out there right now. It's called
Should I
Write This
hold on to
Down.
my seat?
Kim, this really is not my favorite part, and especially today,
I'm nervous.
especially today.
So,
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm
I'm gonna
nervous.
go from I'm gonna go from nervous to curious, just
yeah,
so that
see, there
I
you go. Right there you go. When you feel
now I'm
fear, you've
chill.
got to.
All right.
There you go.
I'm
Be
strapped
curious.
in. I'm
So
ready,
here it
Ted.
is. Here it is. So it's write this down, right? And this is
Okay.
where we each go around and leave at least one takeaway from today's episode that the people need to write down so they can level up. So Kim, you're the guest of honor. What do the people need to write down?
Don't be afraid of feelings. It's just a conversation that might need correcting.
Don't be afraid of feelings. Write that down. Good stuff. All right.
So Kim, the reason why I really don't like this part of the show is because, just like today, you just been just on it, moving. And then we get to this part and you get to drop something like you just did, and then I'm supposed to try to follow that. And it's always so challenging. I just, you know, just I guess there's something that that a friend shared with me one time years ago, and it was just I kept being like, man, why is this person doing this, or why is this happening, or whatever. And then he just said to me, he said, "Well, Ted," he said, "that's just people. That's it. That's what you got is just that's just people." And then as I got older, it really started to make sense to me, right? That it's just people, and people, like you said before, they have their experiences and things that they've gone through in life, and things around them, and how they respond to certain things, and so when it happens now, it's kind of like it doesn't impact me like it used to, probably 20 years ago. I wish, man, I wish I thought like that 20 years ago, because I probably would have not lost as much sleep on certain things, knowing that sometimes some things are just people, and just what they've gone through, and it also has helped me to, like, before I speak, to just pause
Mm.
and really take some time to really think about what I'm about to say, versus just putting something out there, because you can't take it back once you put it out there, and you don't know what this person has gone through, why they're the way that they are. And I don't know, and I just I would just think that if in the world, if everyone kind of thought about that a bit, and you'll see that people, there's some things with a lot of us that are very similar, right? And the things that we've gone through, and so it's not so much whether it's race or gender or whatever, right? Like, some of that stuff is just some things people have gone through, and and you take that into consideration, and how you how you deal with various situations when you're engaging with people.
Yeah, that's worth writing down. I mean, it's just people. And one of the things I have had a mentor tell me that everybody's going through something that you know nothing about.
Yep.
You have no idea, and it's not. Even I remember I'd be in the retail world years ago, and somebody would just blow up over the littlest thing, and we would always say it really wasn't that.
Yeah,
It's something they're dealing with at home, and you just happen to be standing there. So yes, I
right.
think if you have that perspective that Ted just mentioned, that it's just people, um, and I think that'll help. So no, definitely worth writing down. No, that's good. So for me, the metaphor of the life earthquake, like, that's powerful, because
Mm,
one thing, if you think about an earthquake, there's never been an earthquake in the history of the world that just lasted forever. I don't care how bad it was. I don't know, it was in California, Haiti, no matter where it was, at some point the earthquake was over. So that's why that's a powerful metaphor for me, that whole idea of life's earthquakes. And the thing is, it's temporary. So if you can survive the temporary, you make it to the other side, and things get a lot better.
yeah.
Write that down. You got to survive life's earthquakes, and you definitely can.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been a great episode, Kim. Thank you for sharing everything that you
So much.
shared. And so what's the best way for people to connect with you, to get your book and get more information from you?
I have my own podcast that I just started. It's called Flavors of Emotions, and it's on YouTube and on all your favorite podcast players. I have my book, Yucky Yummy Savory Sweet: Understanding the Flavors of Emotions, and Amazon. You can find it. And you can find me at kimkorte.com. It's KORTE.com.
All right.
And I do want to say what a pleasure it was to be here today with you two gentlemen.
So much. Thank you. The
It
pleasure
was
was all
just
ours.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was a great conversation, and I'm just always I admire somebody that can take a topic and just put it a completely different perspective and a unique perspective that's theirs and theirs alone. So yeah, this was a great conversation.
Thank you.
And don't forget to share the
Share the
show.
show. Share the show. Share the
Right.
show.
Don't keep this great information to yourself. And don't forget that you can follow us on you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify and the other podcasting platforms. That way you never miss an episode in the future. That is our time this week on the 30-minute hour. Thank you again to Kim Korte for being our guest and sharing everything that she shared. And until next time, have a great one.